Session Blood.
All right, welcome back everyone to Session Blood episode 4. I'm here as always with my man Karol.
Hello, how you doing?
So just before we begin today, we just want to go through a little bit of admin really quick. We do have an email address if anyone has any questions or wants to contact us regarding anything. It's sessionblood@gmail.com.
Yeah, so basically the name of our podcast @gmail.com.
And just for any listeners out there that aren't aware, there is a big Flesh and Blood fan page on Facebook. So if you just type in Flesh and Blood fan page, that will pop up.
Yeah. There's a lot of great content being shared daily there.
Yeah, and to all the newer players, don't be shy to jump on and ask any questions. And just one final thing, for anyone who enjoys Flesh and Blood podcasts, a couple other ones you might want to check out is Radio Reflex, hosted by Alan and Ian. And also there's Fyendale's podcast, which I'm not sure if it's still active, but Sasha, the winner of the first calling, recorded some episodes on that. So there's some really good information out there.
Yeah, definitely some more great fab content for you to check out and just get different perspectives on the game.
All right, so what a weekend in the Fab world we had.
Yeah, so I mean, we've seen a back-to-back road to nationals here in New Zealand, down in Wellington, which was on Saturday and Sunday, and also a road to nationals in Taiwan as well.
Yeah, so we think we're just going to go through and cover the Taiwan one quickly first. We're doing things slightly differently today because we don't actually have the deck lists from the events.
Yeah.
So we won't be discussing sort of particular card choices as such, but we're still going to go through and try and give you a good overview of what happens.
Yeah, exactly. And in Taiwan, we saw the top 8 being composed of 2 ninjas, 2 dashes, 2 warriors, and finally the dream, the rune blade.
The rune blade. Someone did it. Someone cracked the top 8 with rune blades. So.
And he made it to top 4 as well. I think he won his first round.
He did. Well, I want to give a big shout out to that rune blade player out there for succeeding where I could not. So Really well done. And it's great to see some of the lesser played heroes get a bit of love.
Yeah, and the mechanologist player who made the finals proved that you don't need those expensive legendaries to win. This guy was rocking an Iron Rod helm instead of a skull cap, which was great to see that, you don't need the flash cards to get into those top positions. And he ended up winning
winning the whole tournament. So I thought that was really cool to see. Like, whilst the legendaries are great to have, I think that just goes to show that don't be put off from going to a tournament by thinking, I don't have all the legendaries, so I can't, I don't have a shot at winning. I think he definitely proved that wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
And like we said, we don't have the exact deck list, but we just wanted to say it was sort of another classic top 8 matchup, finals matchup in the Taiwan meta, where we had Mechanologist versus Warrior, and courtesy of our Taiwan correspondent who has been uploading a bit of coverage.
Yeah, massive shout out to Kai Ansai, who's been posting on the Flesh and Blood fan page all these updates from Taiwan. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, we really appreciate you because I know there's a lot of players from around the world interested in the Taiwanese scene, so thank you for keeping us up to date there. And we don't have the deck list like we said, but it looks like we saw from the comments that the Dash player managed to get out, I believe, 3 very early chambers in that matchup.
Yeah, I think it was something like turn 2, he had 3 chambers, which is pretty rough to play through.
Yeah, and I'm sure a lot of players out there who've played against Dash will know how difficult that is when they get those 3 early chambers out. For 2 reasons. Firstly, it just allows you to use all your resources efficiently all the time.
Yeah.
And also, just that little side advantage, it means you're not going to be drawing cards that block for 0 later on the game, which is very critical against decks like Warrior.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like, decks like Warrior or Ninja that rely on those on-hit effects, the way to punish Dash, I guess, is to punish their hands that they can't block, whether it's the Chambers in hand or the Teklo cores. Good job on getting those out early. Yeah,
because you might see Dash players that get the early Chambers out and it seems that, they're not getting an advantage out of them because they barely use the 3rd chamber for most of the game, but it's like you've got your combo effectively down on turn 2 and you're just set up for the game.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we don't have too much more to say about Taiwan apart from big congratulations to the mechanologist player taking it out there. we might come back and revisit it in a future podcast once we have those deck lists. But so we're just going to move right along to the double header down in Wellington.
Exactly, and you've gone down there yourself, didn't you?
I did. So I made a last minute decision to travel down. I really wanted to try out a Runeblade list, and I did a bit of last minute testing and thought, why not? So I drove down with my partners, but it was an 8-hour drive there and back. But
that is commitment.
The things we do for the love of this game. And I know you wanted to say something about the player numbers.
Yeah, so I just want to do a massive shout out to all the players that turned up. I mean, people traveled from all over the South Island, from Dunedin. I know there were players from Nelson. Shout out to Money. Massive group of players from Auckland. So it turned out to be the biggest road to nationals yet, with 49 players on the first day, and I believe it was around 42 on the second. And on that note, we've heard that basically the first event reached capacity, there was maximum amount of players in there. And I just wanted to give a shout out to Gene Brumby, who is a player down from Wellington who already qualified for nationals down in Dunedin, and he decided to sit out just to give more players from Wellington a shot to qualify for nationals. So, I feel like that's just a reflection of the spirit of the community.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that's really great. It just shows people giving someone else a chance, not attending the road to nationals in your hometown, to give some of your players that on the scene a chance to qualify for nationals. So I think that's amazing sportsmanship, really good community spirit. So mad respect, Gene Brumby.
Yeah, it was awesome to see.
And just a little bit of context for our international viewers, Wellington's about sort of halfway in the middle of the country, effectively. So it was great to see, like Karol mentioned, people driving 7-8 hours down from Auckland, people travelling up from Christchurch and Dunedin, which are way down the bottom of the country. So
great turnout, definitely great turnout. I think it's seeing someone, Matt Rogers managed to take out both the tournaments back to back, putting him on a four-peat, basically winning 4 roads to nationals in a row, which is an amazing accomplishment. And, great job, Matt.
That's, what can you say? What a performance. And these were both 6-round tournaments as well. Previously, the road to nationals in New Zealand had been 5 rounds due to player numbers. So to make it all the way through, I believe he went undefeated day 1 in Swiss and the same on day 2.
Yeah.
So effectively, he played 2 perfect tournaments. And
didn't drop a single game, which is, the game does have a little bit of variance, and you have those good matchups and bad matchups. So it shows the level of this player, and I really think this is the main player to watch out for to take out nationals in New Zealand.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and I feel Matt has certainly cemented his place as one of the best players, not just in the world, in New Zealand, but probably in the world as well. And I think we're going to really look forward to seeing if anyone can take him out at the next Road to Nationals event that's coming up soon.
Yeah, and this is, Matt said himself that he's going to be this is going to be the last, I believe. It is the last one before Crucible, but he will also judge a few of the events. He's going to judge the roads in Nelson, help Mani out there, and he's going to host his
own Road to Nationals, because he actually runs a card store up in Auckland as well, so he'll be judging / hosting the event there. Maybe it's the last chance for someone to take him out in the next one.
But going back to the overview of the 2 days, give us some insight about some of the things that you were predicted that were going to happen, some things that kind of were unexpected for you down there.
Well, I was really expecting, based on what we've talked about previously and some of the previous results, I was thinking there'd be a lot of dash, probably mainly mid-range dash, and a lot of warrior players, and in particular some of that go wide warrior strategy that we saw Matt played a really good success, and that other players have played.
These are the decks and these are the lists that have won previously, so why not just run with it?
Yeah, and I was actually quite surprised because on day 1 in Wellington, we saw there were 9 Guardian players. And that's a deck that I just was not expecting to see much of at all. I thought there might be 2 or 3 players, players who really consistently play the deck. And that was interesting to me to see that players are thinking, maybe we figured out how to beat Dash and we're going to play it. And also, I know we mentioned last time that we actually thought there wouldn't be as many Ninja players because it seemed quite difficult to beat Warrior and also quite difficult to beat some of the Dash decks. But we saw a lot of them too.
I feel I'm happy that Guardian, that my beloved Bravo got some love. It's a deck that I used to play back in the day. I played it in the Calling, so for me it was nice to see that players were still trying out strategies in that class, and also that Ninja just seems to be getting lots of love down in Wellington. So that was pretty surprising for me. But it's good to see. People sticking to their to what they know. Yeah.
And I just want to take a moment to talk about my experience for a moment on the weekend. So I decided that I really wanted to play Runeblade because Runeblade, it's a deck that hasn't been given much love. I feel like some people say it feels a little bit underpowered. So I wanted to go down and show that it could be done on Runeblade. So I tested a little bit with my friends before the tournament, and like we always say, it's one of the most important things is being able to construct your deck for the meta you expect to see.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
And I think that's probably where I went a little bit wrong. So I made this deck thinking I would have a pretty good matchup against Dash, Midrange, Ninja, and Warrior.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I went down and there seemed to be Guardians and Brutes and all these decks all over the place and Dash controls. So I did come in 9th on day 1, so I nearly made the top 8, but just missed out, unfortunately. And I just want to make a little note about gameplay here for things that you can learn about from your losses, because I think you learn a lot more from your losses than you do from your wins.
Absolutely.
And I think there is a temptation sometimes as well, when you make a bit of a mistake and you lose a game, to say, I would have won if I hadn't made that mistake, or I basically won that matchup but for this mistake. But I feel like a lot of the top players will tell you in a game like Flesh and Blood, which is very highly skill-based, often it's the player who makes the lowest number of mistakes will win the game, who plays perfectly.
And it's something that I've heard from, the top players, the players that have been, top 8ing or winning quite often, is that a lot of the time it is a case of, who makes less punts or less mistakes is going to take it out.
Yeah, and I think that's something important to note. So while I can sit here and be like, if I didn't do this, I might have won, or I could have done this, I think at the end of the day, if you make a mistake and lose the game, then the better player on the day won. So I think it's important to sort of respect that and respect your opponents, and you make a mistake, you're disappointed, but you shake their hand, you say good game, well played, good luck for the rest of the tournament.
So far from my experience playing the game competitively as well, is that there is that kind of respect in the game that I really appreciate in the players. And don't be shy after the game to go over the game with your opponent. I feel like that's something that you can really learn a lot. If you lose a game, ask your opponent, hey, where did I go wrong? What were you, worried about that I could have done or that I didn't do, basically, that game that could have ended in me getting the win. Yeah,
and I think the really good thing about the community is most players are really happy to do that. They're happy to go through and say, well, I think you might have been able to do this differently and this and this, so something to think about for next time.
Yeah, always try to see ways in which you can learn and improve the game, and I feel like it's much... there's much more value in losing than a lot of people might think.
Yeah, and even situations where, like, if you feel throughout the tournament you're like, I drew 4 red cards and I couldn't do anything, and if that's consistently happening throughout the day, then that's, rather than put it down to bad luck, you might need to go back and have a look at your deck and say, maybe I need to balance out the resources, I need to sacrifice a bit of power for consistency, and I think that'll really serve you well going forward.
Absolutely.
And before we go on to analyze a bit more, we love to give shout outs to the community on this podcast, and I know there was a particular player that you wanted to give one to.
Yeah, I really enjoyed, from what I saw online, it was Alex Barron. Alex played, on the second day, he played a Ninja Control list, which is something that, I just blew me out of my water. Like,
Yeah, I had
no idea where that came from, and I really respect players who innovate, who try something else and actually succeed with it. So it was really good. Shout out to you, Alex, for trying something different and not following the kind of mold set by previous lists.
The sort of common wisdom, so to speak. And I know another player we've talked about before, one of the top New Zealand players, a guy called Jacob. I've heard he might have had a hand helping out with constructing that list, but I don't think that should take away from the fact that Alex actually committed to playing that list and playing something completely unknown. And I think that's really brave, and I think that's really cool.
And yeah, shout out to Jacob for switching from his Dash Control list. Jacob's been a Bravo player since before Arcane Rising. And Welcome to Wraith, he was a Bravo through and through. So it's nice to see a player, play the class they love. Yeah,
and that's another thing to me that was quite interesting. We saw, because we've, I think, talked about before how Guardian, and we've mentioned just before, Guardian seems to be a deck that struggles against some of the more common decks in the meta, and yet you still have some of the top players thinking, I think I can do something differently from that. And
to great success.
Success. He made the top 8 on day 1, before losing to the eventual winner, Matt. And then on day 2, he actually went undefeated in the Swiss. I believe, I'm not sure, I believe him and Matt decided to take a double loss in the final round because they're guaranteed 1 and 2 spots. So, yeah, that's something I thought was quite cool as well. And I know the Ninja players out there as well, a lot of people say, including us, that Ninja's going to have a really tough time. How do you beat Warrior? How do you improve your matchup against Dash? But we still saw some traditional Ninja players playing that Ninja aggro, top 8ing both days. And a little bit of spice from Alex Barron playing the Ninja Control list.
Yeah, I always love to see some spice, so that was great to see. And for me, from a viewer perspective, I was following along the tournament over the weekend. I did find it surprising that a lot of players who did end up playing Dash did decide to go for the control variant rather than the kind of mid-rangey combo variant that Matt was playing. Why do you think that was?
That was a really interesting development to me as well, because I actually thought that the Dash control deck was dying off a little bit in popularity. I'd really only seen, at least from my experience, Jacob, the player we've mentioned who's played it to great success. He's really been the only person I saw playing that deck. And I actually thought that its weaknesses to the mid-range deck would put players off playing it. So I wonder if some of the Dash players down there maybe just looked at it and thought, if we make a few changes to the deck list, we know we have a really good matchup against Ninja. We have a really good matchup against Warrior. There's going to be a lot of Ninja and Warrior players. So we just need to make a few tweaks to improve our matchup against Dash Control.
Yeah, and I guess there were some players who were adding some spice as well to those Dash Control lists. And
I think one of the cards we saw that they've put in to attempt to improve that is cards like Tome of Fyendale. So a common way to use that card is you play Mage Master Boots as your in the leg slot for your equipment, so that you have at least one guaranteed go again Tome of Fyendale turn during the game. And I actually saw at least one player playing Time Snap Potions. I played against a player using that who used it to great success. And I'm not. Again, unfortunately, we don't have the deck list, but I wonder if we might have seen a few of those Dash Control list players playing cards along those lines. I know people were trying things out like Drone of Brutality. Perhaps they thought they could go for a strategy where they just block out the Dash mid-range players all the way through and try and fatigue them out at the end with drones.
That's true, yeah.
Or if they could just gain enough life to get through those big turns and then just slowly win the game from there.
I guess that's one thing, one major difference between the Dash mid-range and the Dash Control is the Dash mid-range tends to boost a lot more. So there is that kind of more kind of attack front where they boost attack, pistol, and then go for the whole chamber thing. It's a more aggressive approach, but at the cost of boosting out cards. So maybe they were thinking they could just drag it out to late game and just stall it out till the other dash player runs out of cards.
Definitely, because it's very common for dash players when they're playing a dash mirror they both will generally run 59 card deck. So by that we mean the 60 cards in their deck, but they start with an induction chamber in play. Mm-hmm. So they're running 59 cards. So maybe one of the strategies they were thinking is that the dash mid-range is a lot more sort of card intensive in a way. You use a lot of cards to go through all your damage.
Yep.
So if I'm a dash control player, I can gain enough life through cards like Sigil of Solace, Sunkiss, Tome of Firendale, and basically
and just block.
Just block. So I can
if you just swing back with the pistols, eventually I guess they will have to start blocking, right?
Yeah, so that was, one comment I would make, however, is, and again, this isn't intended as a criticism of the players who chose to play dash control, because obviously I believe there were 3 dash control players in the top 8 day 2. So it's obviously a very good deck. Mm-hmm. But sort of a word of caution I would say out there for players like developing new decks and testing them out. I think from what we've seen of what can only be stated as the dominance of that dash deck is, I think a good starting point if you're making a deck is your first stop should be testing it against dash mid-range. And to see...
Yeah, I guess so.
And I think...
It's such a prevalent, deck that... Matt played it 3 times and he won 3 times.
Yeah, because I really think it's the point where if you can't beat what seems to be the best deck in the format at the moment, you might need to adjust your strategy a little bit to see what you can do to tweak the matchup a little bit to improve it.
Yeah.
And again, that's not saying if you build your deck just to beat one deck, then you're going to struggle against other decks. So, and I think that was one issue I had with my Runeblade deck is I kind of thought, I'm going to build it so I can beat these 3 decks, and that I'll play a bunch of them throughout the 2 days and it'll be fine. And I ended up playing sort of 3 Guardian players. I played a Brute player, I played a Wizard player. So these are like some matchups that I thought, well, they're not that great for me, and there probably won't be many people playing them, so I won't have to devote a lot of time.
Yeah.
But if your deck isn't able to beat a wide variety of decks as well, then you really run the risk of not even making that top 8 to sort of beat some of the top players.
True. I guess it's like, if you want to win, you have to be able to beat the deck that has consistently won, But on that note, I do want to give a shout out to Isaac Olsen and Jason Long. They were the 2 players who tried different strategies. We saw Isaac top 8ing with his Brute list.
Which I know is one of your favorite classes.
Yeah, definitely. Shout out to Brute, and they're both players who are based down there who tried different strategies to take down that dash. Yeah,
and also... speaking about that, it was really good to see some sort of new faces in the top 8 down there as well.
And it's, from my perspective, it was really good to see different faces, even from day 1 to day 2 as well.
Yeah, definitely, because I know on day 2 we saw Kiki running the dash control, made it all the way to the final at Wellington local.
Yeah, well played.
And I was only able to catch bits and pieces of that matchup because I had to drive back home. But from what I heard, it was a pretty hard-fought contest. And, I feel like inherently dash control, it struggles a bit versus dash mid-range.
It's a bit on the back.
So I think to really take the fight to one of the best players around playing against not necessarily a good matchup, I think that's really good.
Yeah.
And also just seeing new players in general turn up to tournaments. And because I know I want to give a quick shout out as well to the youngest player at the tournament on day 2, Matthew Lester. Good to see some maybe like new generation bad players coming through.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So that's really great as well. And so I suppose thoughts going forward. The thing is, we're coming towards the end of this metagame in a way.
Yeah, with Crucible just around the corner, there is only one road to nationals here in New Zealand. I believe there are some roads in Malaysia and possibly in Taiwan. But yeah, what are we going to see a shift? Are we going to see people trying out ways to beat that dash mid-range? Or are we going to see people, play the heroes that they love?
Yeah, because I know a lot of people have been a bit frustrated by the dash deck, sort of by its perceived dominance. It has done really well. It's won, I believe, the majority of the Road to Nationals so far, and it,
4 out of 5.
Yeah, and it can feel like a little bit oppressive at times, I know.
Yeah.
But for players who are a bit concerned about that, who feel like, I want to try something different, but I can't beat Dash, and or like this is the most consistent deck. Like, well,
hey, if we all try and come up with strategies to beat Dash without playing Dash, then it might not be that.
Then it might work, but even if it's the case, if you're feeling a little bit disheartened by the dominance of the deck, then the light at the end of the tunnel is coming. I feel like, it's not to say Dash won't be a good deck in Crucible of War, but I feel like we mentioned last week, that's going to open up just a huge number of different strategies.
Yeah, and those of you who haven't seen, the one and only spoiler so far from Crucible, it's an arm piece.
Gambler's
gloves. Gambler's gloves that lets you sacrifice it once and re-roll a dice.
Well, it allows you to force any player to re-roll a dice, which is kind of fun. So, like, if you're playing, who knows, if you're playing against a brute player, you might side that in, they roll 6 on Scabskin, you say, actually, I'd like you to re-roll that. You rolled a 1, I guess it's my turn again.
Yeah, I already love it, to be honest. I feel like, it's a card that just screams like a fun time to me.
Yeah, and I really want to see some decks maybe running stuff like Crazy Brew, and
True, I didn't think about it.
Works on Crazy Brew, so you can roll that, you hit a 2, you re-roll it, hit a 6, then maybe that's all you need to...
Wow. Yeah, that's actually really cool. I haven't actually thought about it, because, as a brute player, I just focus on the scab skin rolls.
Yeah.
So for me, the interaction with scab skin is amazing. You can build a deck that heavily relies on rolls from scab skin, and whenever you do roll that 1, that's when you just go for a reroll.
Yeah, and just going back to the meta again briefly, I think some of the sort of quote-unquote problems that people might talk about with the meta, with Dash being so good, I think it's important to remember at the moment that because of issues with COVID that's, across the globe, unfortunately the Road to Nationals schedule has been sort of heavily curtailed in a lot of countries. I mean, we've only had events so far in New Zealand and in Taiwan. And
I think we're going to get some events in Malaysia.
Yeah, so we're going to see some more events in Malaysia, and I think Taiwan, the game is a little bit newer there than even places like Australia and the States and New Zealand. So I think once we have more tournaments in more different areas, and I know Legend Story Studios, developers of the game, are keen to get that going as soon as it's safe to do so. I think we might see a few different strategies emerging. So
I think Crucible is really going to flip everything upside down, and when these countries, we have we know of people from Australia, US and in Europe that really just want to get those games going and really play in real life.
Yeah, because I know there's a bit of a scene developing in places like the UK, and I know in...
Shout out to Gregory Farr and Mark Henderson, loyal listeners from London.
And also, I know there's a bit of a scene developing in the Netherlands. There's actually a Dutch fan page that's growing.
So I've been in contact with Remco, who has told me about, there's a scene developing there with 15 to 20 players. So shout out to all of you as well. And, Remco told me that he's a massive fan of Ranger, and I just really hope that, Crucible will be the answer to really give that class a boost.
Yeah, exactly. And I think with the upcoming Crucible set, plus the fact that we're going to see a lot more tournaments from a lot more different countries, it's really going to showcase players' sort of innovation and coming up with new strategies and things changing week to week.
Yeah.
Because I guess one of the issues with the limited number of tournaments in limited countries is the metagame can be a bit insular. People sort of see what worked last week and want to play the same thing, or might struggle to come up with strategies to beat these decks. But I think the more players, with so many different minds working on so many different decks, I think we're really going to see a bunch of new cool strategies come out.
Yeah, and talk about innovation. I really want to point out that here in New Zealand, we are going to have a Road to Nationals in Nelson, one of the cities at the top of the South Island. The day, I believe it's the day or 2 days after the release of Crucible. So we're going to see some innovation. We're going to see people, open cards to add to their lists or even create completely new strategies, days after the release. So these cards, I really hope for a crazy exciting tournament down there, just because of, the potential to just try something completely new.
Yeah, and I think that's one Road to Nationals I'm really looking forward to, and we're definitely going to drop a podcast very soon after that, looking at all the new Crucible of War strategies.
I'm expecting some whack deck lists
from
that event.
I think we're going to see things, see totally unexpected lists from all over the show, and really rewarding players who are able to sort of think on their feet and come up with strategies in this short space of time.
Yeah. And we don't know if the full set is going to be spoiled or not by that time. We don't know if we're going to see all the cards for players to actually practice or even try out some of these strategies. Maybe there'll be, half the set spoiled and half not, and then you just start opening packs and, seeing what's there. And talking about spoilers.
Yeah, I think, are we pretty much coming to the end of our show? Oh, wait, let me just check the notes here. What's that? It appears that Session Blood, we've been granted the favor from Legend Story Studios they've given us a spoiler.
Yeah. So we're gonna get some fresh info about Crucible, and we will inform you about a spoiler next week.
Yeah, so that should be coming next Monday New Zealand time. So we're going to be looking at potentially doing both a podcast and a YouTube video.
Yeah, so definitely tune in next week. We're going to be talking about, a freshly dropped spoiler, and I'm going to put together a video for you all to have a look at the card with your own eyes.
Yeah, and I think we might do our best to maybe see what strategies that new card could involve playing with, or what decks it might be added to.
Oh, I'm definitely going to do some, gold fishing with that card.
Yeah, so we really appreciate the company allowing us to do that. So thank you to everyone there. So make sure you tune in next week, where we'll be discussing the new card from Crucible of War, and I think it'll be a lot of fun.
Exciting times. Catch you then.